Welcome to this episode of Uplifting News Sleep Aid Daily, where we read you good news to fall asleep to. Today is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. Our uplifting stories include Stokes Mitchell, Broadway star recovering from coronavirus, sings from NYC apartment window to salute healthcare workers. A 1,000-year-old cherry tree blossoms in Japan. And Lego is producing 13,000 face visors a day for healthcare workers. Now, breathe in. Breathe out. And relax as we dive into these stories. Our first story is from New York Daily News by Ellen Moynihan. I'm singing for them. Broadway star Stokes Mitchell, recovering from coronavirus, now sings from his NYC apartment window to salute healthcare workers. Broadway legend Stokes Mitchell, having come through his fight with coronavirus, is now nightly performing a little further uptown from his Upper West Side apartment window. As in many parts of the city, Mitchell and his stuck-at-home neighbors have been applauding and cheering for healthcare workers every day, with the cheers rising up like clockwork at 7 p.m. Now, as the clapping and air horn blasts recede each night, Mitchell takes to his window to serenade the street with a hopeful, defiant anthem. His rich baritone rings out even as pots and pans continue to clang. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far. I'm glad you're okay, a woman standing on the street below shouted up to Mitchell as he stood in his apartment window singing on Sunday. His apartment, appropriately enough, is on Broadway. When I finally got to the place where I was symptom-free, I could take a deep breath without a cough, I started to sing for the healthcare workers and the responders, Mitchell told the Daily News on Monday. Mitchell started performing for the masses last week. He first thought of performing something different every night, but then settled on The Impossible Dream, the show-stopping theme from the 1965 Broadway smash, Man of La Mancha. Mitchell sang the song in a 2003 revival and was nominated for a Tony. It's so soothing, bystander Carrie Rodriguez, 52, said after Mitchell finished singing Sunday. Broadway pianist Will Johnson lives in Washington Heights, but came out just to hear Mitchell. My conductor friend lives across the street and took a video, said Johnson. I thought it was a one-time thing, but then people kept sharing the videos. Mitchell sometimes changes man in the lyrics to woman. On Sunday, he tweaked the words to sing, and the world will be better for this, that one healthcare worker scorned and covered with scars, fought with his last ounce of courage. The 62-year-old performer said the virus was especially rough for about a week and had him running fevers up to 104.8. I was just short of ending up in the hospital, he said. It's nice to be over it now and through it and on the other side. After it was introduced on Broadway, The Impossible Dream was covered by everybody from Frank Sinatra to Elvis Presley, from the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to, yes, Cher. Aretha Franklin performed it at the funeral for civil rights hero Rosa Parks. People think it's about doing something impossible, but the subtitle of the song is The Quest, he said, going on to recite his favorite lyric from the song. To fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. That's totally the healthcare workers. They're doing that. It's about trying your best, trying to do something that feels impossible as a country, as a nation. This is where we are now, he added. Artists have this wonderful ability to bring people together. We're not able to do that on Broadway right now, but those things still exist in other ways. Mitchell, originally from Seattle, began his acting career in television with a recurring role in Trapper John M.D. His first appearance on Broadway was in a production of Mail, for which he won the Theatre World Award for 1988. He won a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical in 2000 for his starring role in Kiss Me, Kate. Mitchell said many people in the Broadway community have been hit by the disease, lamenting his friend Terrence McNally, the famed playwright who died on March 24th from complications stemming from coronavirus. He noted that for most artists, The disease has been financially devastating. The Actors Fund, a nonprofit that provides safety net for those in the performing arts, established in 1882, is needed more than ever, said Mitchell, who serves as chairman of the board. It feels like those 138 years is a rehearsal for what's going on right now, he said of the group's history. A lot of people in the arts are considered gig workers. What are people doing now that they're in their house? They're turning on television, they're turning on Netflix. People are turning to artists, whether they know it or not, Mitchell added. But you're not only watching the actors, but the editors, the film scorers, the grips. There are a lot of people most of the time we're just not aware of. Mitchell also called attention to workers who are sometimes invisible. There are a lot of heroic people out there. They're so incredibly important, said Mitchell. The restaurant workers, the delivery people, the folks at the markets maybe being exposed and still showing up. I'm singing for them too. One of the things artists are good at is collaboration. If any one person messes up their job, the whole thing comes apart like a house of cards. But that hardly ever happens, Mitchell added. I wish Washington, D.C. would take a lesson on how well we work together. Different ethnicities, different religions, different skills. Mitchell's wife, Allison Tucker, suggested he take the show on the road to some of the hospitals whose staff are at war with the pandemic. When asked how long he would continue his musical tribute, he didn't have an immediate answer. I'm not sure, Mitchell said, as long as it gives people some sense of hope. This podcast is hosted on Anchor.fm. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free, there's creation tools to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Our next article is from National Public Radio by Kat Lornsdorf. A reminder that nature is strong. In Japan, a 1,000-year-old cherry tree blooms. As winter turned to spring in the town of Miharu, Japan, a small group of workers pounded posts into the ground to lay a grand pathway at the base of a giant cherry tree. It was the same path they've laid every year, wide enough to give thousands of tourists a chance to walk up and marvel at the ancient tree as its cascading branches fill with delicate pink flowers dipping toward the ground. But with the coronavirus pandemic taking hold, it was starting to feel as if that pathway might be laid for no one. It wouldn't be the first time the tree, known as Takizakura, or waterfall cherry tree, bloomed alone. At more than 1,000 years old, the tree has lived through wars and famines and earthquakes and storms. One of the worst nuclear disasters in history took place in 2011 near this part of northeastern Japan's Fukushima prefecture, and tourists had only recently started to return. In the last couple of years, they'd been coming to see the Takizakura in hundreds of thousands. Things were finally getting back to normal. Then the coronavirus hit, and fears of radiation transformed into fears of crowds. Sadafumi Hirata, 53, stood near the tree looking at the dark red buds forming on the branches. They're starting, he said, just a few more days. Hirata grew up there and he's visited the tree all his life. Now he is in charge of protecting Miharu's cultural heritage, the most important element of which is the Takizakura. He checks on the tree often, making sure it's healthy and strong. He and his team build long wooden posts to help hold up the tree's branches, like scaffolding, after a heavy snowfall threatened to snap them a few years ago. Taking care of the tree is a job the whole community takes part in. Neighbors visit and pull weeds or help fertilize the ground with leaves, the same way their ancestors did hundreds of years ago. A small shrine at the foot of the tree is filled with offerings from passers-by. Rice, salt, even a tall bottle of sake for the spirits of the tree, Hirata explained. When the most powerful earthquake in Japan's recorded history hit off the Japan's coast on March 11, 2011, it triggered a massive tsunami that damaged the Daiichi nuclear power plant about 30 miles away, causing a meltdown that blanketed towns near Miharu with radiation. After the earthquake, Hirata rushed to the tree. It was unharmed. All day and night she waited, but few people came, Hirata said. She missed visitors. But still, the tree bloomed and Hirata kept visiting. Whenever I went out, I worried. I had to see if she was okay or not, he said. But every time I saw she's still standing, unchanged, it was always a relief. No matter what, the cherry blossoms are still there. Fusayuku Hashimoto, 72, stood nearby looking up at the tree. He lives just down the street and runs a small stall selling souvenirs and sprouts from the tree. This year, he was told not to open his stall, and he's hoping visitors stay away. After the earthquake, it was nice when people from Tokyo came here to show support, he said. But this is worse because now I don't want anyone from the cities coming here. I don't want them to bring the virus. A minivan pulled up and a small family hopped out. 2 young girls, their face covered in masks, ran towards the tree, their parents trailing behind. The older girl is 9, and they brought her here as a baby, Kazue and Kenjiro Otomo said, right after the nuclear disaster. They were moving to another prefecture and wanted to say goodbye to the tree one last time. For me, the tree is a reminder that nature is strong. Nature can get through anything, Kazue Otomo said. Hirata doesn't think many others will visit this year, but the Takizakura will get through this too. This tree has lived so long, and the longer you live, the more bad events you see, more tragedies, he said. So she will see more bad things, but she'll also see good. Life is layers, layers of bad and good. Last week, Japan declared a state of emergency. The country has more than 7,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases, with more than 100 deaths. But also last week, the Takizakura, tucked into a valley between 2 hills, burst into a cascade of delicate pink flowers, just as it has for more than 1,000 years. And it will bloom again. Our last story is from USA Today by Sydney Henderson. LEGO is producing 13,000 face visors a day for healthcare workers amid coronavirus pandemic. LEGO, the company famous for its plastic building blocks, is using its resources to build protective gear for healthcare workers on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic. The Denmark-based toy maker company announced on Instagram Thursday that it's producing more than 13,000 face visors a day for Danish healthcare workers after converting some of its molding machines to create the safety equipment. This week, we began to make visors at our factory in Billund for healthcare workers on the front line in Denmark, LEGO wrote in its social media post. We are so incredibly proud of the team who made this happen. They worked around the clock to create designs and make molds that can produce more than 13,000 visors a day. We are grateful to have such talented, dedicated, and caring colleagues. LEGO accompanied the statement with behind-the-scenes photos of its visor production, created to provide an extra barrier between healthcare workers' eyes and their patients. This is not LEGO's first act of kindness during the coronavirus pandemic. Last week, the company announced a $50 million donation toward relief efforts, including a contribution to the charity Education Cannot Wait, which provides education for children in crises. As millions of families stay home, the LEGO Group and LEGO Foundation have joined forces to help children in these unprecedented times. That's it for tonight. If you have uplifting news to share, please send it to unsadpodcast@gmail.com. That's UNSAD podcast@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us at Uplifting News Sleep Aid Daily. Stay safe and stay inside.